ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of The Lap Down. I am your host, Greg Farmer, and with me tonight is JP and Ryan, and I believe Brett will be joining us a little bit later on. But how are we doing tonight, fellas?
Doing fantastic.
Can't complain.
Well, that is fantastic to hear. As always, we like to thank our band, the Alkali Project, for the intro and outro music for this particular podcast. And there's Brett. He just joined in. How you doing, Brett?
Good. How are you?
Doing pretty well. Yeah, we're just going to jump right into it with a little bit of news that has come out over the last couple of days. First things first, it was announced yesterday that the option tire that the Cup Series ran in the All-Star race in North Wilkesboro will be run at Richmond next month after the Olympic break. Starting with Brett, my question is, do you think we'll have the same result as the All-Star race where they can run 100 laps on the same tire, or could it be a different result due to it being a different track?
Well, compared to North Wilkesboro, I believe that Richmond's a little more abrasive than North Wilkesboro. Not a lot, but still is. So I think they're going to get a little more tire wear on them, but it might be 60, 70 laps on their set of tire, on the reds, and then the normal on the yellows.
Okay. What about you, Ryan? What's your opinion on it?
I think it will make a pretty sizable difference because, first off, you have North Wilkesboro this year, which was coming off of a brand new, fresh repave, versus Richmond, which is a racetrack that has been aging for, I don't remember exactly when it was last repaved, but the tire wear on the old tires has been significant to the point where pitting an extra time for a set of tires has actually ended up paying off in terms of results on the racetrack. The lap time that you gain from getting a fresh set of stickers was already starting to prevail over the massive amount of time that you lose with how slow the pits are. And I can only imagine that kind of difference is probably going to be made bigger by option tires.
Yeah.
And the fact that those tires wear out that quickly makes me wonder, will this option tire actually be able to run 100 laps?
Yeah. Well, we all saw in the All-Star race and at Nashville, Joey Logano is spectacular at being able to stretch things beyond their limits. So,
yeah.
I still think that fuel tank was illegal, but nobody, because they didn't even bother to take that car to the R&D center either, which is weird.
No, they didn't. But JP, what are your feelings on it?
I think it's going to be interesting. I think you might see 50, 60 laps on them. That's about it. I think 70 maybe pushing it. But
I'd be concerned if that's all they can get out of those tires, even if they are significantly faster. Or to get 70 laps out of them would be concerningly short.
Yeah. Look, I have one more question. The All-Star race was 200 laps, and I believe they got 2 sets of those option tires. Richmond is 400 laps. How many sets of the option tires do you think the teams would be allotted?
From what I'm hearing from my good friend Bob Poppers, it's 2.
Is what?
It's 2.
All right.
Sets
I guess the real question would be whether or not, are we is limiting the number of option tires versus is there actually going to be a requirement to run both different tire compounds at some point in the race? Or would it be possible for someone, if they just flat out don't trust the option tires, to run primaries from start to finish?
Yeah, that's another variable. Is NASCAR, like you said, is NASCAR going to mandate that they run the option tires, or if they're actually going to just leave it completely up to the teams? But one thing that we somehow forgot about that could be factored in would be the weather as well. You know, I don't know, we've seen for like the millionth time this season, weather has impacted the race. The races, with the
Yeah.
exception of Sunday at Pocono, they had some rain Sunday morning, but the race was actually the weather was very fair. So we'll have to wait and see. We're talking 4 weeks out, give or take.
Yep.
Yeah.
We got the upcoming weekend at Indianapolis, which is looking like, fingers crossed, solid weather.
Yeah, I heard on Door Bumper Clear, and I saw a post on Facebook earlier that the weather's supposed to be fairly sunny and in the 80s this weekend. So I got everything crossed that we actually get the full weekend in without it being impacted by weather.
Yep.
So I was talking to Brett earlier today, and one thing that I forgot to throw in our little outline that I'm going to throw in right here is it was noted yesterday that JD Motorsports in the Xfinity Series has filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Now, I don't know all of the details on that, so if Brett or Ryan could fill us all in on that, if they have any information on that.
Yeah, well, it's ironic that news came out this week, because if I'm not mistaken, last week we were talking about JD Motorsports as an option for Haley Deegan going forward. And, well, clearly that now is seeming unlikely unless she brings a ton of money.
Yeah. And besides, she's doing the Indy NXT stuff right now, so.
Yeah, well, she's looking at that, but I would imagine that still staying in stock cars would be a more logical progression, even if it isn't the easiest path.
It really sucks for them, and sucks for people like us that gotta kind of make it in the media world and report on this news. I'm sad to see JD Motorsports file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, because I was supposed to have them on my program here in a couple weeks, and now I don't think that will happen.
Yeah,
I believe
just
this
wondering.
mainly. Sorry.
I was kind of lost on most of what you just said there, JP.
Go ahead though, Brett.
I believe mainly the issue with JD and why they were losing more money than they were gaining. They're a mid-pack team with minimum sponsorship.
Yeah, and they hadn't had a good run since Ross Chastain was in that car.
Yeah, but go back to what Jeff Gordon said a little while back about the teams. The teams actually don't make any money. He said that Hendrick Motorsports hasn't made a profit on anything in over 10 years. So, but it could, like Brett said, it could be one of those things where they're actually hemorrhaging money more than like trying to retain money.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But speaking of the whole IndyCar thing, let's give a shout out to IndyCar as a whole for their safety innovations, especially with the aero screen after their race on Sunday at Iowa, where the last lap saw Alex run out of gas on the last lap on the backstretch, and Stingray Robb had and absolutely catapulted over the back of him and went barrel rolling down the backstretch. And then at the end of the clip that I saw, there were a few other cars involved where one of them ramped over another car and kind of landed almost in the cockpit of a second car. I don't know if you guys saw that clip or not.
Yes. I
Yeah,
saw it
I saw a
live.
clip after the fact.
Yeah. But,
Scary,
I mean,
scary stuff.
yeah, I was to say, like, the safety, especially in IndyCar, since Dan Weldon passed away in Las Vegas in 2011, has
And
just
even
come
more
such a
so
long
after
way.
Justin Wilson at Pocono 2015.
Yeah. I mean, you could even throw Robert Wickens in there too with his crash. I mean, it didn't kill him, but he got hurt. But I mean, you look at like some of these races, like the Indy 500 last year, where Kyle Kirkwood got clipped and went roof side first into the outside wall upside down, and Scott Dixon flying through the air a couple years ago and basically tearing his car completely in half.
That's right, or even James Hinchcliffe in Indy 500 practice. What was it, 2016? I think.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I believe
when he
you're
actually
correct.
had
Yeah.
when he had a piece of suspension actually go through. I think it was his spleen.
Oh yeah. I remember that now.
Yeah, and it literally almost killed him.
Yeah. I mean, like, I don't know about you guys, but I think the aero screen, as much as people bash it because it looks ugly on the cars, it's probably one of the greatest safety innovations that IndyCar ever did.
Honestly, I think it looks cool too.
Yeah. It looks cool.
And the open cockpits are nice if you're racing at low enough speed like go-karts to keep it safe, but anytime you break the 100-mile-an-hour barrier, I feel like you should be in a closed cockpit.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Certainly, if you're breaking the 220-mile-an-hour barrier like IndyCar has been for 3 decades.
Yeah. And I like IndyCar's policy too, where if obviously it's an open concept cockpit, so they don't have window nets like NASCAR does. So when they get in a wreck, their signal to the safety crews that they're okay is they flip their visor up. I like that, unless obviously the driver is knocked unconscious.
Well, yeah, but I mean at that point, you could say the same thing though. If the driver is knocked unconscious in a stock car, they can't put the window net down either.
That is very, very true. Very true.
But he's actually been cleared. He was actually cleared to run the Toronto race later this week, so he'll be in Toronto for that race.
Yeah, I saw a video that Bob Pockris posted earlier today that showed his quote-unquote worst injury. It looked like it was just a blister on his index finger. And if that's the worst that came out of that, I'd say that's doing pretty damn good.
Yep.
But yeah, just wanted to give a shout out to IndyCar for their safety innovations after, that was a pretty wicked crash. But going from IndyCar to the Tricky Triangle, Pocono, Pennsylvania. So what was it? Friday the trucks raced. That race was impacted by some weather in the closing laps, but Corey Heim ended up scoring his 5th win of the season. And I was listening to Door Bumper Clear yesterday, and they said that Corey Heim and Christian Eckes have led a combined total 51% of all available laps that have been run in the Truck Series this year, which is just an absurd number of laps led, and it kind of makes you wonder what the other teams are doing, honestly.
Yeah.
Following the leader, that's what they're doing.
Yep. And then Saturday was the Xfinity Series race. Oh my goodness, who won the Xfinity Series race? I cannot remember.
Custer.
Who was it?
Custer.
Cole.
Yep, Stone Cold Custer. That's who it was.
Coleslaw
got
Custer.
Yep, got his first win of the season and the first win for Ford in the Xfinity Series this year. Did anybody
I say,
see?
I mean, it doesn't help that when he's the only Ford in the Xfinity Series that can actually win on a consistent basis,
Yeah, yeah.
or even a
Did any?
semi-consistent basis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did anybody see Sam Mayer just straight up dump Shane Van Gisbergen?
Yeah.
Don't remember it off the top of my head now.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't see it, but according to like the other podcast that I listened to, Sam Mayer just had like no regard for like anything and literally just drove straight through SVG. And but SVG was, all smiles and, power of positivity, after the race. And apparently Chandler Smith was upset with Sam Mayer as well. Apparently Sam was racing Chandler real hard, and Chandler did not like it that much. But I mean, why are these guys? I mean, it seems to be more of a Joe Gibbs thing than anything else. But why are these guys so upset about getting raced hard? Like, isn't that
Well,
what racing's supposed to be?
It's
to
two things. It's what racing's supposed to be, and it's their job. If they don't like it, get out of the sport.
well, I'll say this. In Chandler's defense, Sam put Chandler in a bad spot at Pocono. I got to watch a little bit of it. The way it happened, I think he's mad about was they were going into either the tunnel turn or turn one, and Sam basically pinched him almost to the apron. And then when he did that, Chandler got dropped like dropped in position like a rock.
Yep.
I mean, I was asking that because there's always two sides to a story,
Let me see if I can find a clip so I can actually know what you guys are talking about.
Yeah, I mean, the only clip that I saw was post race. Chandler Smith walked up to Sam Mayer's car and was like yelling in his window, and the door bumper clear guys were making fun of Chandler Smith because he still had his headstock on, and they said that's like almost as bad as trying to fight someone with your helmet still on.
I mean, a headstock versus a helmet, one's a lot more protective than the other. Because I'm seeing that clip now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then he went and removed his headstock after talking with him for a minute with it on. He goes and removes it.
Yeah.
When he first walked up, he had his headstock on, but he took it off midway through the conversation.
Yeah. But to me, that sounds like it's just as bad as when Clint Boyer tried to beat up Ryan Newman while Newman was still in his car and Boyer still had his helmet on.
Yeah, well, it's different when you're trying to talk versus when you're trying to punch.
Oh, you want to go at it, Ryan?
JP, that would not be much of a fight.
So, moving on to Sunday, after the weather cleared Sunday morning, the weather was actually very good for Pocono, considering this time of year and it being in the Pocono Mountains. Ryan Blaney scored his second win of the season over Denny Hamlin and Alex Bowman. Bowman backed up his win with another good momentum finish this past week. But seemed to me like I listened to it on the radio. I wasn't able to actually sit down and watch it because I had to work. But it seemed like track position and strategy was king.
Yep.
Based on what I was hearing, Blaney basically got himself in position because he flipped stage 2, if I remember correctly.
He waited on Phil, unlike like Eric Jones and such like that, who had a great run, by the way.
Yeah, Eric Jones did have a good run. I was actually happy to see the legacy cars up there. But I mean, it's typical Pocono. Track position means everything. Hard to pass. That's really always been a thing with Pocono. But a couple of the big things that were talked about during this race, though, one, it was an absolute traffic nightmare for the fans, apparently, from what I read on social media. Apparently, when those thunderstorms came through Sunday morning, they told the parking attendants and the security guards and whoever else was helping with parking to take shelter. Based on what happened back in, was it 2010 or 2011 when that fan got struck and killed by lightning up there. And, but I was reading posts on social media that people were still sitting in traffic to get to the track when stage 3 started. I would be pissed at that point if I were you guys, if I were them. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you think about it, tickets are what, $67, maybe even $80. I don't even know what they won down there, but if I paid that much, almost $100 for a ticket, and then I get to see my favorite sport, I'd be pissed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know what the refund policy was like if somebody got to the track that late and opted that they wanted a refund instead of actually going in and catching the final third of the race or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I was seeing posts that people were saying that they were like a mile from the track, and it was like an hour and a half journey at the
Yeah.
very least, and it was either TJ Majors or Freddie Kraft on Door Bumper Clear said, basically Pocono's in the middle of nowhere, and there's pretty much one way in and one way out. And
Yeah, it's a lot like New Hampshire in that way.
yeah, and Pocono did put out a statement in the middle of the race, though, that said that if anyone was affected by the traffic debacle, that to contact them and they would do something to make it right, whether it be a full refund or maybe a credit to next year's race. Because, I mean, if you think about it, excuse me, Pocono had to date because literally like fan. And now that they're down to one date instead of, Pocono's old doom and gloom, they do their best to make the most out of it, especially for the fans. And I believe they said for the last 3 years since, they started allowing fans back in after COVID, it's been complete sellouts.
Yeah, I mean, I was there for the only doubleheader that allowed fans. The one with Bowman winning over Kyle Larson's tire failure, then the Kyle Busch clutch and win.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, where he only had third gear or something like that.
Yep. And I got to see 2 races and didn't get to see a single burnout that week.
Well, speaking of Kyle Busch, great segue, Ryan. We've got a little bit of beef we got a little bit of beef on our hands. Corey LaJoie versus Kyle Busch. So apparently Corey turned Kyle Busch.
Apparently, yeah.
Yeah, going into turn 1 and started off a massive wreck that took out a bunch of cars. Harrison Burton, Kyle Busch, a few others, and then who gets off scot-free is Corey LaJoie. In Corey's words, Kyle Busch blocked him twice, and then he turned him. And I agree with what Brett Griffin said on Door Bumper Clear. You don't block somebody twice. You block once, and then you get turned. As we saw, I'm sorry, Ryan, but we saw with Michael McDowell at Talladega. But my question to you guys, by the way, this did not result in a penalty at all. after
I'm aware.
two consecutive weeks of penalties for wrecks and or contact with Carson Hocevar and Bubba Wallace. Elton Sawyer went on Sirius XM NASCAR radio and said that they will talk to Corey LaJoie before this weekend, but are not issuing any penalties, which I do not agree with, but that's a debate for another time. But my question to you guys, starting with Brett, is it time to boot Corey LaJoie from the 7, or how many more chances does this dude get in the Cup Series?
Sorry, I'm eating dinner, so if I'm...
No, you're good.
I don't feel like it's time for him to get booted from the 7. The reason why I'm thinking that is right now he is not the best driver at Spire, but he runs well when he needs to.
Well, for this year, he is the veteran leader at Spire.
But what I'm saying is I know you have a bunch of rookies in the wings waiting that could come up and get in his seat, like a Mayer, Brandon Jones, Sammy Smith, stuff like some people like that from Junior Motorsports or anybody in the Xfinity series. But the problem is right now they're trying to help 2 rookies in the Cup Series succeed. With them bringing in Michael McDowell, it does kind of put more pressure on Corey next year. I'm not saying Corey's on the hot seat this year. He's on the hot seat next year with Michael McDowell.
I can see where you're coming from, but look at it from this perspective too. Who is outrunning Corey LaJoie on almost a weekly basis? Carson Hocevar, the
Everybody.
rookie.
Everybody.
Yeah, I mean pretty much, but I'm talking about just within the Spire camp. You know,
who's LaJoie's spot or crew chief this year?
That's a good question. I honestly don't know.
Ryan Sparks.
Is it Ryan Sparks?
Yeah, that's his crew chief, yeah.
Okay.
Look, the way I'm thinking of it is, think about it like this. If you take out the drivers in this situation and just point at the crew chiefs, which I think having Rodney Childress next year is going to help him a lot too. But Hocevar has Luke Lambert, who's been a crew chief for for a couple of good drivers. He has the experience, he has the knowledge and stuff like that. Spark, I don't know who he's I think he's only crew chief for LaJoie, if I'm not mistaken, or I don't know who else he's crew chief for.
Ryan, look up.
I got you.
What I'm saying is Hocevar has a great crew chief on his box, who's ran with RCR and Ryan Newman, so he knows what he's doing. More of like a crew. To me, it's more of a crew chief error than a driver, because there's been many calls that he has made that not the best for Corey.
Yep. Let's see here. Ryan Sparks. He spent 13 years at Richard Childress Racing. He celebrated the 2011 NASCAR Camping World Truck Series and 2013 Xfinity Series championships, and NASCAR Cup Series victories in the 2017 Coca-Cola 600 and the 2018 Daytona 500. So Ryan Sparks has been around for quite a while.
Yeah. Now, I don't know what role he was in with some of those teams, because obviously, like, he wasn't Dylan's crew chief for any of Dylan's wins that he mentioned on that resume there. That he celebrated that 2017 Coke 600 win. I know he wasn't the crew chief in that role. I don't know what role he was in at that time.
Yeah. But Ryan, what are your thoughts on old Corey LaJoie?
I mean, my thoughts are, at this point, especially where they're bringing in another veteran in Michael McDowell. They're upgrading his crew chief to about the highest possible level. I don't think LaJoie's going anywhere this year, but I think absolutely there is no excuses left after this year because again he won't be their only veteran option to lead the team. He will have a top flight crew chief. There will be very little excuses because like right now Ryan Sparks can kind of fall on kind of the blame for how that 7 car has been running.
Yeah, I mean, there better not be any excuses next year because JP's got Corey LaJoie locked in to win the championship next year.
Yep.
I still think that decision's a little bit insane, but
Well, JP's not been the most sane person we know, so.
Well, yeah, I mean that's pretty obvious.
That is true. But what about you?
Corey LaJoie
What about
right
you,
now
JP?
the fact that Corey LaJoie is currently 30th in points, though, compared to his teammate, who after a 25-point penalty is still 23rd in points. I mean, that's a 7 points position difference for a rookie versus his experienced veteran teammate who was supposed to lead the team.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean,
don't forget Zane Smith's second place finish at Nashville too.
Well, yeah, but Zane Smith's second place finish, you could put that on the same level with Corey LaJoie's top 5 finish at the Daytona 500 this year. They're both outlier results, yet Zane Smith and LaJoie are both still way down the points.
I know. I was just, pointing that out. You said everybody's outrunning, Corey LaJoie, and his rookie teammate has almost won a race this year. Came within probably a couple hundred feet of winning a race.
Yeah. But I was more, when I said rookie teammate, I was looking at Hocevar, not Zane Smith.
No, I know. But JP, what are your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts are wait and see what happens next year. If he doesn't perform next year, he's the problem. He's getting the kibosh. Sorry, Corey. I know you're one of my friends, too, but it's time to basically shut up or get off the pot.
I mean, now here's the thing. Could they have LaJoie go back down and potentially be a mentor in the truck series if they value his laps of experience and his knowledge off the track for some of their young guys coming through the system? Wouldn't have to completely get rid of him, but send him basically down there to mentor guys like Rajah Caruth and other drivers coming through.
I could see that.
I can see that being a position that they potentially move him to if they don't see the improvement that they're looking for, but they still like some of the values in him, especially, again, some of maybe those off-the-track leadership qualities that I'm sure he has displayed over the years, because I don't believe he's a bad guy by any stretch.
I almost see, if he does get canned, him going to colleague.
Well, that's where it comes down to, if he gets boot, what team would be willing to take that chance on him again?
Yeah, and to add on to that, I could see, the possibility is always there. But let's say he doesn't perform next year and they decide to, go their separate ways. I could honestly see them bringing Rajah Caruth up to the Cup Series.
I don't know about bringing Rajah straight from trucks to Cup. As much as we've seen it work with Hocevar, we've seen it work with potentially Corey Heim in the limited starts that we have seen from him.
Well,
I would
hold
just
on. With Greg's thought on that. Well, you got to think that we have the good examples of Hocevar Gilliland didn't go to Xfinity. He went straight up to Cup. Or you can think of, and this is going to sound
But,
bad, but John Hunter. He did the
well,
same thing.
yeah, John Hunter spent a year or two in Xfinity, didn't have the best of success, went back down to trucks, and then back up to Cup.
Yeah.
So, again, I'm not saying that going from trucks to Cup isn't possible, but it certainly is not the way I would recommend drivers to try and make it work. Because we've seen examples like, look at Zane Smith. I mean, yeah, he almost won that race at Nashville after a lot of overtime. But it is not a flawless strategy to go and say, oh yeah, we're just going to skip the Xfinity Series altogether.
I'm going to make one point real quick, and I just thought about it. Could it not be the Joy problem? It could be a Spire problem.
But then the question being, is the other Spire cars, in particular that 77, running so much better?
Well, the thing is think about it like this. Zane Smith was running really well in the 38 when he had his limited starts last year. 38.
Yep.
And right now, the 38's 20th in points, and the 34 is 22nd in points.
Yep.
And the closest Spire is 23rd. Right.
But also, again, that Spire car that's 23rd in points received a penalty.
Oh, crap.
Uh-oh.
Well, to add on to Brett's point, I don't think it's a Spire problem, and I don't think it's a Corey problem, but I do think it's a Corey problem. Now, hear me out on this. I think he's pretty much been the only driver at Spire for the last 2 or 3 years, and now they brought in Hocevar and Zane Smith. And Hocevar is outrunning him, and I think Corey is getting frustrated with his own personal performance. Like, hey, I'm supposed to be the veteran leader here. I should be better than this, and he's just having these poor results, and I think it's starting to like mentally get to him.
I could see that. Again, kind of my biggest thing there would be the question of, is it something that he can snap out of, or is it just something that will, because again, especially if McDowell comes to that team and outperforms him next year, no, I think the team themselves will be like, well, we don't really have a need for another veteran leader, especially if McDowell's outperforming on the track.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when going back to what you said about Rajah Caruth, I think genuinely Spire's kind of role in the Cup Series, I think they're better suited rather than trying to rush someone like Rajah Caruth in their truck program all straight up to Cup right away. I think they'd be better suited taking one of the junior motorsports guys and developing him for a year or two in Cup before he probably gets poached by one of the bigger Chevy teams. Although, granted, there aren't really any bigger Chevy teams with available seats, and that's where we kind of get into the weird case that NASCAR really is in right now, where there really aren't any available seats that are set to open up.
Yeah.
Like, realistically, unless someone like Josh Berry, Noah Gragson, or someone like that completely flunk out over the next 2 years, I really don't see a world where there's virtually any changes outside of Truex and Denny Hamlin both retiring. Like, I don't really see a world where we see any major shakeups around the entire series for another 3, 4, 5 years. I mean, obviously, there's the question mark of, okay, does Trackhouse start expanding to try and incorporate their drivers? But they've already named who their drivers are. They've got Zane Smith. They've got Shane Van Gisbergen. they've got Connor Zilic. They've got all three of them under contract in addition to their two current drivers. So it's not really about who's Spire going to add because we know who they're going to add when and if they get the room. So that's just a weird spot that I feel the NASCAR Cup Series is really in, is that we've got talent in Xfinity, but nowhere really to send them without displacing very solid veterans for, well, Sam Mayer could be better than Noah Gragson, but that's just a very much a could, not a will be.
Yeah. And not to change subjects or anything, but one thing that I forgot to add during our news segment from earlier, a little bit of the rumor mill is churning again from Door Bumper Clear. According to them, they got a little bit of insight that Corey Heim will be staying in the Truck Series next year.
Yeah, I saw that. I'm a little disappointed about that because I felt like he was showing Cup readiness.
Yeah, but the rumor, and I mean, it's still a heavy rumor too, that 2311 will be acquiring one of the SHR charters for next year, and the driver yet to be determined, but is heavily favored, is Riley Herbst.
I don't like that decision at all.
Yeah, yep. I'm kind of with Ryan on this.
I mean,
sorry.
Yeah, just real quick. First things first, as to the reason why I'm not really a fan of that is that the big sponsor that he'd be bringing with him would be Monster Energy, and Monster's already there. So I don't know if Monster's going to pay another massive budget to get on a second 2311 car, but it seems like the situation that if they're already there and taking on a second car, theoretically that would be at a discount compared to if a outside third sponsor were to come in. Kind of like buying a bulk deal. Not to mention how much benefit would it actually be for Monster to be on a second car at 2311.
Yeah, I'm just going to say the same thing, but I'll wait to you like this. Corey Heim, barring gap was only one start with 2311 racing, and Industrial. He did a good job in my eyes. What are you doing? Putting someone else in that car when
I could see it if it was a older veteran to kind of get the car up to speed and get it to a baseline level.
Mm-hmm.
Like if they were, say, pulling if they're now, this could be what ends up happening. Maybe they pull in a mix of a fair amount of Riley Herbst, but also mix in MTJ as a partial driver on that same car and basically make it an all-star type car. Or drivers. That I can maybe see because then you've got Riley Herbst to help bankroll the car. And then you've got a rotation of drivers to hopefully get it to a baseline to then move on to Corey Heim once you have that third car at a stable level. But there's been nothing to indicate that is the plan.
But that, like you said, Ryan, that could be the plan because I know I saw a couple months back it was confirmed that Monkuich was going to run the Daytona 500 next year for them. So,
yeah, the question being, would that be a third car or would that be a fourth part-time car like the 50 was this year?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. All right. Well, we are going to shift gears and we are going to go into our green flags and black flags. And as always, for our new listeners out there, green flags is something that we enjoyed during the race weekend, and black flags is something that we did not. And Brett, why don't you kick us off?
My green flags for the Cup and the Xfinity is Toyota was running well. I'm an Eric Jones fan, so I was excited when the 43 was in second most of the race, and he did finish in the top 15. But my black flag is you can't. It's that Corey LaJoy and Kyle Busch incident that wrecked the field, and then can't make that move into that corner like that. You're too low, and you're gonna slide off into somebody.
What about you, Ryan?
All right. Well, my green flag for the weekend, I'll give it to the weather because aside from that red flag late in the truck race, we finally had a weather-free weekend for the most part. Again, I know the truck race had that slight delay at the end, so I'll give a green flag to the weather, and I'll give a black flag to the same thing that Brett did, but for a different reason here. The wreck between those two. I am of the opinion I think it probably should have been a penalty because it was pretty clear to me that Corey LaJoy went and retaliated on Kyle Busch after the block and Kyle leaving room for Corey to still make the corner without wrecking either one of them. And Corey just turned straight right into him and hooked him going into a corner that, as was highlighted on the Cup broadcast, has had a lot of scary incidents going through that turn one.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
I mean, I'm of the opinion I think that probably should have been a penalty of some kind. I would be inclined to potentially say, and obviously bias here, I'm a Kyle Busch fan, but I would almost say that should be on the same level as the Chase Elliott wreck at Charlotte a year ago, or the Bubba Wallace Kyle Larson wreck at Vegas 2 years ago. I mean, it was pretty clear that it was retaliation for a block, which was, for the most part, something fairly minor on a restart, as everybody was jumping out of line, trying to find clean air on their nose. And everybody did that on every restart. So to think that warrants someone dumping somebody else, I don't agree.
Yep. What about you, JP?
Okay. So, JP's all fired up.
Okay.
Because, like you said, my black flag goes to that wreck. We've seen some scary wrecks at Pocono. I think we can all agree on that. And while that wreck wasn't near as scary as some of them, it still was a business hit. So, my black flag goes to Corey for causing that wreck. And putting Kyle Busch in that situation. Kyle, not a huge fan of his, but I'm siding with Kyle on this, saying that Corey, people make mistakes, but that was a bad, if you even want to call it a mistake, that was a bad one. And my green flag has to go to NASCAR for the fact that they put out right away that they were putting something in play for the fans that could not get to the racetrack.
I think that was more a Pocono decision than a NASCAR
Oh,
decision.
okay.
You know?
Yeah.
Because I know this is unheard of, but Pocono is actually one of 4 independently owned venues on the NASCAR circuit. Pocono is not owned by SMI and it's not owned by NASCAR or ISC.
Yep.
So those are my 2 green flag black flags.
What about
All
yours,
right.
there, Greg?
Well, my green flag goes to Ryan Blaney. He looks to be returning to championship form, and as much as I don't like most of the Ford drivers, I actually am a Ryan Blaney fan. Mainly because my son is a Ryan Blaney fan, and as we stated a few weeks ago or months ago, I felt bad for my son when I took him to Atlanta in the spring and he got to see Blaney lose by a matter of inches to Daniel Suarez.
Yep.
But yeah, Blaney looks like he's returning to championship form. Looks like he's starting to get hot. He technically could have 2 or 3 or 3 or more wins by now in the season. But yeah, and my black flag goes to oh my goodness. I mean, there wasn't really anything. I mean, besides the obvious Corey LaJoy incident as a black flag. I would say probably my black flag goes to the fans who got caught in the traffic. Not that they received the black flag. It's just I feel bad for them because a lot of them did miss a lot of the race on Sunday due to them being stuck in traffic trying to get to the track. But I mean, I guess I could give it to Pocono too. Like, just if it's in the middle of nowhere and there's like not a lot of residential and stuff around there, let's see if there's some funding to maybe build some access roads to make it easier to get in and out of there. I mean,
Yeah,
it's a massive venue, so why can't we do it?
Well, but when you talk about adding access roads to stuff like that, you also then start adding in the more and more security and local police that you'll need to have directing traffic and keeping watch over gates to make sure people aren't going in the wrong ways.
Yeah, that is true.
So
But
I mean, every action does have an opposite and equal reaction.
Yeah. But so they are racing at Indianapolis this weekend, and for the first time in 4 years, they will be racing on the oval instead of the road course.
They'll be heading the right.
What's that?
They'll be heading the right way down the front straightaway.
Absolutely. So before we get into our picks, Jamie sent me a message earlier. He would like me to take control of Jamie's trivia tonight. Mind you, no cheating. So here is the trivia question, and there is a bonus question at the end, and we will go one by one with our answers. I know the answer, so obviously the 3 of you will give your answer. In honor of the triumphant return to the Indianapolis Indianapolis Oval for NASCAR, in what year was the last time the race was simply named the Brickyard 400? Brett.
Hold on, I'm thinking. I think it's 2011.
Okay, Ryan.
I don't know. I think it's more recent than that. I tend to remember. I think Big Machine Vodka came on board in 2018. Trying to remember if there was a presenting sponsor or something before that. I'm gonna say 2016.
All right. What about you, JP?
I'm going to say way back to 2003.
Okay.
Oh, 3? Wow.
So the last time that the race at Indianapolis was simply named the Brickyard 400 was the year 2011. Brett, you are correct.
All right.
Oh,
So
And
who's the presenting sponsor after that then?
I honestly do not know.
Because I'm
I
trying to
know
remember
Allstate
who.
had it for a while. It was the Allstate 400 at the Brickyard.
The what?
Allstate 400.
I don't remember it being called the Allstate 400 at the Brickyard.
So in 2012, it was the Crown Royal presents the Curtis Shaver 400 at the Brickyard, powered by
Okay.
Big Machine Records. Yes.
Okay.
And
Let me see
so
what
the
the
bonus
name was in.
in
Okay, yeah.
2013,
Okay, 2017, yeah, it was the Brantley Gilbert Big Machine 400, Brickyard 400.
Yep.
Okay, I'm proud of myself. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. 2013 was the Crown Royal presents the Samuel Deeds 400 at the Brickyard.
Okay, yeah, and then. Okay, yeah, it's just had a weird collection of presenting sponsors, and then around 2018, 2019, they signed a deal with Big Machine Vodka, who had been the presenting sponsor from there until Verizon stepped in with the road
Yep.
course.
I just have to say
And
this real quick. Ryan,
all
do you
right.
know how I knew it was 2011?
How?
Because I remembered Paul Menard won.
Okay.
And you
that's
know
how.
what and you know what's funny is that was going to be the bonus question is who won that race.
I
My
could have
bad.
told you who won that race.
All right, well, I will present a different question. Who finished second in that race?
Who? There's a good one. No one remembers who finished second.
Oh, I do.
I know
I do
Jamie
as well.
McMurray won the year before that.
Was it Casey Kane?
Let's go. Let's start with Brett first.
Okay.
It was Gordon.
Ryan.
Stab in the dark and say Jimmy.
All right, and JP.
Scabbing the dog and go Casey Kane.
All right, the answer is Brett. You are correct. He beat Jeff Gordon on pit strategy.
Okay. Yeah, I was trying
It
not
was
to
his.
guess the same driver that Brett had already gotten, but I kind of had a feeling it was probably one of the Hendrick guys.
Because
Yep, it was his one and only Cup win.
Because if I remember correctly, Paul Menard pitted, and he was actually, if it would have ran a couple more laps later, he would have ran out of gas.
Yeah,
Yep.
it was one of those situations where overtime would have killed him.
Yeah, because Gordon was hard charging. I remember that.
Yep, and Paul Menard was the last one out there on the old fuel and tires, and just
Yep.
hanging on for life. But
All right, so now go ahead.
But now we've got 4 years away from the Oval, and now we're back.
Yep. And now that we're back, we're going to go into our race picks. Now, mind you, we do not have any information on the oval with the next gen car, so we're really going to be taking a stab in the dark on these picks. I have all four of our names on the wheel. Obviously, for some reason, my camera is not working. I can assure you that our names are on the wheel. And with the first spin,
We all know my name's not on the wheel.
Ryan, you get pick number one.
About time I get pick number one. All right, now I've got all the decision in the world, which is weird because normally I'm used to having to deal with very limited pick selection because I'm usually picking 5th or 6th. I mean, I could very. Just kind of hoping some of the normal favorites were going to get taken beforehand, so I could justify taking someone more out of the ordinary. You know what? I'll trust the racing history at Indy. I'll take Kyle Busch.
All right.
I was heavily considering others because of their next gen success, but Kyle having won 2 of the last 4 Brickyards. The last 5.
Yep. And so the next pick will go to Brett.
I'm going to take Brad Keselowski going with a Ford driver at this point.
Not a bad choice. Very much would have been in consideration for mine as well, considering he's a recent winner of the Brickyard Oval back in 2018.
Next pick will be myself, and I am going to take a guy that seems to thrive on winning quote-unquote new races at new tracks. Now, technically, it's not a new track, but he does have very good success. I am taking Joey Logano.
It would be a new track for him to win at.
Yep. And the last
he's never
pick
won at the Brickyard, and in fact, Penske as a whole has only gotten 2 wins at the Brickyard. 1 from Brad Keselowski in the Xfinity Series, and 1 from Brad Keselowski at the Cup level.
Yep.
And
now the last pick goes to... Yep, I spun it, and it landed on JP.
All right. So JP goes with our Iggy 500 double and Coca-Cola 600. Kyle Larson will make up for not being able to run the 600 by winning the 400.
All right. Totally didn't see that one coming.
I was debating taking that one, but I was like, I was trying to factor in success on the oval versus next gen car.
Yep.
And Larson should have been my pick because realistically, now that I'm thinking about it, he had all those laps of practice on the Indy Oval, granted in a much different car.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And then before we close out the night, I just wanted to throw this out there to our listeners. After next week's episode, post Indianapolis, we will be taking a 2-week break for the Olympics, unless some major breaking news from the motorsports world comes out. We will record an episode, but if it does not, we will take that break and see you guys after Richmond. But as always, we'd like to shout out our sponsors, Fanatics, Century PC, Sleefs, Duke Cannon, Bulletproof Coffee, W Energy, and Fubo TV. Mm-hmm. Please be sure to click on the links in our podcast description wherever you listen. But that's that. So I am Greg, and for Brett, Ryan, and JP, this has been the Lap Down, and we will see you guys after the Brickyard. Deuces.
Deuces.